Welcome back. Now, the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms has proposed reviewing states and local governments' share of the value-added tax revenue to 90% and reducing the federal government's share from 15 to 10%. The panel also recommended an upward review of the current 7.5% rates charged to customers. The chairman of the committee, Taiwo Oyedele, disclosed this at a stakeholders' exposure and impact assessment session organized to discuss some of the major proposals in the national tax policy in Abuja. The proposals were part of the reforms being introduced to boost the nation's tax revenue. Now, to discuss this, we are joined by a chartered accountant, Akin Fatunke. You're welcome, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mazino. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, sir, we have to ask, how will increasing states and local governments' share of VAT revenue from 10% to 90% impact their spending priorities and potential for economic growth? And are there specific areas where this additional revenue could be most effective?
This is a form of physical federalism, again, being in practice. More resources being devolved more to the states, which has been the crying axe for people who have always been asking for restructuring. If you will recall, states were going on some 35% local government, on some 15% in total. By the time you now add then the federal, everything will make up the arithmetical 100. But what the Taiwo Oyedele harmonization is now asking for is that can we change it around, change the federal to 10 and then increase the colossal that goes to the to the states and local governments by 90%. I think it's going to be a welcome development. You don't get anything if you continue to do the same things and expecting different results. I believe strongly that a lot of the ADU should be at the local government and at the state levels. And I think, if you ask me, is something we should strive for. The downside to that, of course, will be the fact that we are still talking about sharing, and not the other way around of baking the cake. My expectation is that when this is put in place, the states, hopefully, when we are now agitating, say, for instance, for state police, if it comes to be, and then looking at the resources that reside within the states to research, develop, harness, and bring them to fusion so that they can have some quantifiable things to bring to the center. I think it's like a step that we should shift, a paradigm shift, really, that we should try and see how that helps us. I think the VAT allocation that the federal has been getting, in my honest opinion, especially if you look at the sharing formula that has detailed it, whereby sometimes maybe some of those states who are really not producing high enough are getting wide sum. When we get into the nitty-gritty, we might begin to now then decide to sift and see. So, like the wiper of a motor vehicle in the rains, wipe to the right, wipe to the left. The advantages are some of the things that I've just mentioned. The disadvantages would be states who really do not produce. Should they be taking virtually anything? Because if you don't cook, if you don't produce, really you should not eat. But let's look at it from
okay, sir. So I see what you're saying there. Prorates according to what the states are producing. But given the proposed increase in VAT rates, can you analyze how it might affect different business sectors and consumer behavior?
Oh, naturally. I know that some state governors, for instance, have uh, taken a decision that the way they want to spend their monies will be to be looking backwards from the perspective of some other state governors who wants to now move forward. My point of the fact that we have different cultures, different values, different cliches, and our focus are a little bit different. And so if you believe that it is primary education that you want to get into, so be it, get into it. If you believe that it's industrialization that you want to get into, so why not? And your VAT should now be properly applied there. I mean, if you have factor endowment to look at agriculture as, for instance, in Niger State, that can fit the whole of the West African sub-region if they apply what they have solely and tangentially into agriculture, the returns will be unquantifiable, so to speak. What that does is that your area of strength and where you have what you want to describe as the non-oil resources that you can deploy and develop. In Kogi State, for instance, we should be looking at getting more monies into that state and then getting the Ajaokuta still back into life. The hydro that we have in Zungeru, for instance, will now then be that should now be the priority. And Abia, that is already showing some kind of positive sign to be able to give light through the geometrics. That should be those areas. And so water will naturally find its level.
Yeah, well, I hear what you're saying, but what about the states that produce, well, close to nothing, that have very scarce resources? How is it going to go well for these states? What are they going to do? What's the government, or what do you suggest the government's suggestion would be for these states?
Now, the sharing formula, again, will have to change. We started, I know that my dear brother, Taiwo Oyedele, we also have this at the back of their minds. There should be a base allocation that goes to the states. You know, there should be a formula that says, look, okay, all states take a particular percentage within the 90 that we are looking at. And then another set of percentage will now be on derivation, what you bring onto the table, your internally generated kind of revenue. How easy is it to do trade and get surplus and interstate trading? And how advisable is it that you should open up and not get yourself closed? So if you are the ones that is still looking backwards and not doing as well, then you get a little bit of percentage compared to the others. And of course, you know, population-wise, even though we know our numbers, our data print is not sacrosanct, we need to now begin to seriously look at how to get a good population census within the states. The states should be able to do population census in a way and manner to show how many people there are within the geographical areas. That is in no way saying other indigenous cannot reside there, but it will be properly delineated. So if at the end of the day, the way you are leading your question, I think it's a very good question. One has to be very diplomatic. And the truth must be told here and now. In my honest opinion, there are quite a number of states that are not viable, and I don't know whether they should continue to be states in the real sense of it. Of course, we are not talking about expanding the number of states we should have.
Thank you for your honesty, sir. That was very honest of you. Thank you very much, Mr. Akin Fatunke.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, sir.